Hinton. He's a distinguished professor of anthropology and director of the Center for the Study of Genocide and Human Rights at Rutgers University. It's great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Let's pick up on what we were just hearing from Richard and you know the thought that many of these would-be attackers now have the internet, social media to lean on, as Richard was laying out, basically searching for validation when before they didn't have that option. So just tell us a little bit about the state of the situation right now, really in the United States with the increase of this level of political violence.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. One, we're focused right now on Allen, and rightfully so, but some of the dynamics that give rise to individual polarization and ultimately political violence are very much present in the US today. So you talk about social media, and if your previous guest was talking about Obama, certainly the proliferation of not just social media, but now AI and different algorithms that feed off people's outrage has put us in a really bad situation. Far more people are exposed to language of outrage, and demonization is everywhere. I've done research, for example, on a platform called 4chan, which used to be the fringe of the fringe. Many of the things that are said there are now said, on a platform like Twitter or X. And then it's also something where it's monetized. So you also have different influencers or different political leaders who can gain followers, or in the case of influencers, not just followers, but money. So our system right now is gamed up in a really bad way. So you have individuals coming in like Alan, and some of them may have, mental illness struggles. We don't know about Alan yet. There's a lot to find out. What is said to be his manifesto clearly lays out a series of grievances, and I've read a lot of manifestos, especially ones that center on the idea of replacement. His very much is this notion that the current Trump administration's it's unjust, crimes are taking place, and he thought that he had to take action. If this manifesto that's circulating and has been widely published is correct.
Yeah, I've covered mass shootings in the past and been in these situations where we hear from investigators, and they will share with the public that they believe that the shooter acted alone. And that goes back to this idea of lone wolf attackers. And I know you've previously written that violent extremists, they tend to not be these so-called lone wolves, but as you write, that they're in fact part of a pack. So explain why characterizing some of these attackers as lone suspects, which may be the case here according to investigators, why that may be fueling, as you lay out, as you explain, a myth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a myth, and it's a language that people immediately revert to. There's sort of a number of pieces, but there are two sort of initial ones to think about. When someone does a mass shooting attack, and we've had so many over the past, 10 years or so, but when it takes place, often the person is immediately dismissed as evil, crazy, racist, what have you, radical left commie. And that language immediately suggests that the actions are motivated by some sort of internal quality. Now, of course, the terms speak to something, but what they do is they deflect us away from looking at the moral claims and the reasons why these people are acting the way they do. So I mentioned before, many attacks that took place going back through the first Trump administration into the Biden administration were done in the name of replacement, or the notion that there's an intentional plot to replace the white population with non-whites. And that, the shooting in Buffalo, the shooting in Pittsburgh, Tree of Life, all sorts of attacks, El Paso, were all done in the name of replacement. So these moral claims are kind of swept aside with this language that the people are crazy, racist, what have you. The second thing, going to the lone wolf, which plays into that, if you have the crazy lone wolf, well, that sort of explains it away, and it diverts us away from those systemic factors I was talking about briefly earlier about social media, division entrepreneurs. But even saying with the notion of a lone wolf, well, that means they act alone. They don't act alone because they're part of networks. Your previous guest was discussing that a bit, but all of them are interacting with other people. And we're now in a situation where there were people who felt isolated, alone. They may have personal struggles, and they want to make something of their life or to be filled with some sort of meaning. And they can connect in with radical groups online. They can become radicalized. It's happened a number of times. And so again, they're part of these networks. Sometimes the networks are elaborate, extensive. So for example, with replacement, as I mentioned before, that's basically a transnational global network of people who are dialoguing, discoursing, and acting on this idea. So it diverts us away from that, and it's not a very helpful myth at all. And the other thing is people also tend to think that these, if we sort of keep with the language of these racist lone wolves, crazy people, if they act alone, that means they're fringe. But in fact, a lot of the ideas they're motivating their actions and a lot of the dynamics that give rise to their actions are ones that are all around us. They're part of our society. They're mainstream. So it's really easy, and it's probably comfortable to sort of push it away and say it's a lone wolf, a crazy person, it's far away from me. But in fact, that's not the case. All we have to do is open up Facebook or go onto Twitter.
Right. It is everywhere. Alex, I have just a few seconds to perhaps get a closing thought. I mean, what can people do to not turn away, to essentially address this head on and keep some of this from getting lost in some of these communities?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my current book is called Why We're Divided. So it's sort of taking this up in terms of polarization. So there are a lot of people who are sort of working in this area. One of the groups, there are people who do bridging, which is basically just trying to not demonize people and to sit and listen to them. So in my research, I move through sort of far left circles, far right circles, and so if I go to a context like CPAC, everyone's talking about the radical left commies, so on and so forth. You go in more left-leaning circles, everyone on the right or authoritarian, fascist. So you go in here and people it's like you're in a bubble, a silo, and it's generating. So the first thing is to step back, try and set aside your emotions, try and diversify your media sources, and listen to what people are saying and understand it. I'm an anthropologist. That's what I do professionally. But if you're interested, there are groups like Braver Angels, for example, that people can join, Urban Rural Action. There are many of them. But I'd say, listening, stopping demonizing, trying to realize that everyone's being monitored, not just monitored, but behaviorally modified by algorithms in the sense that they're trying to change our behavior. So again, maybe trying to get off the web a little bit and understand that what you're seeing is like a reflection of what you want to see, and it's not what the reality is.
Talking, listening, and understanding. Those are three great points to close our conversation on. Alex Hinton, thank you so much for coming on and letting us tap into your expertise.
Thanks so much for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. Well,